The wind, a sharp, cold knife characteristic of late autumn in Chicago, clawed at the polished granite and glass of the financial district. Below, the traffic on Wacker Drive was a sluggish serpent of headlights, indifferent to the silent drama unfolding 20 floors above. Seraphina, Sera Rossi, stood before the panoramic window of her office, a fortress of focused ambition. At 28, she had already carved a reputation as a relentless defense attorney, sharp, ethical, and possessing an uncanny ability to find the single, crucial thread in a Gordian knot of corporate malfeasance. Tonight, however, her usual post-midnight serenity was shattered by an intrusion of a highly unusual nature. Her phone, secured in the steel-lined drawer for the night, had received a single, encrypted message 10 minutes ago. No sender ID, no subject line, just a meticulously formatted PDF. Sera opened it, her brow furrowing slightly as she read the details. It was a retainer agreement, the largest she had ever seen, dwarfing her firm's typical quarterly earnings. The client was listed only as the Janus Group, a shadowy holding company rumored to have interests spanning from European fine art to South American commodities. The legal matter was intricate, a preemptive defense against an anticipated federal inquiry into complex international wire fraud. The truly unsettling part was the attached addendum. The first meeting will be held at 11 p.m. at the address provided below. Absolute discretion is mandatory. Failure to appear will result in the immediate and permanent termination of this offer. A single address, printed in stark black, followed. An inconspicuous warehouse near the Chicago River docks, a place where legal negotiations rarely, if ever, took place. Sera felt a shiver, not from the cold outside, but from the instinctive warning of a boundary crossed. The Janus Group, she knew, was a ghost. She suspected the true power behind it was the whispered, almost mythological entity that controlled the city's hidden infrastructure, the Black Dragon Syndicate. This is too big, too sudden, she thought, her fingers tracing the smooth mahogany of her desk. Yet, the case was also a dizzying, career-defining challenge. It was the Everest of white-collar crime, and success meant immediate partnership. She looked at her reflection in the dark glass eyes, the color of amber, sharp and unwavering. She was an ethical lawyer, yes, but also a pragmatist. This was a direct invitation to the high-stakes game, and Seraphina Rossi had never backed down from a challenge. Meanwhile, in a penthouse apartment high above the Loop, a man watched the city lights through a wall of soundproof glass. Damien Volkov, known in the hidden corners of Chicago's underworld as the Ghost, was the embodiment of contained violence. Clad in a perfectly tailored dark gray suit, he looked less like an underworld figure and more like the youngest CEO on the Fortune 500 list. But the air around him was still, dangerous, and utterly devoid of warmth. His consigliere, the quiet, older man named Victor, stood a respectful distance away. She accepted. Capo, Victor murmured in Russian, the tone flat. Seraphina Rossi. She is on her way to the meeting point. Damien didn't turn. His eyes were fixed on a point far below, perhaps on the movement of a single cab. Of course she accepted. Ambition is a predictable weakness. But, Capo, Victor ventured cautiously, she is known for her ethics. Why choose a lawyer whose reputation is built on standing against everything we represent? It is a risk. Damien finally moved, turning slowly. The action was minimal, yet it commanded the entire space. His gray eyes, cold and devoid of empathy, met Victor's. A predictable move attracts predictable scrutiny, Damien stated, his voice a low, gravelly tenor in perfect, unaccented English. We need a shield that shines so brightly. The FBI will be blinded by its integrity. Seraphina Rossi is the perfect facade. She is honest, she is talented, and most importantly, she is unaware. He walked over to a table where a single, delicate silver locket lay beside a complex satellite phone. He picked up the locket, a relic of his past, his sole vulnerability, and held it for a brief, almost imperceptible moment. The federal investigation must focus on the decoy, he continued, placing the locket back down, and she will lead the defense for the Janus Group with every fiber of her being. She is the bait. And tonight, I will watch her take the hook. Damien glanced at the time. 10:55 p.m. The game had begun. The address led Seraphina to an aging brick warehouse on the riverside, far from the polished marble lobbies she was accustomed to. The air here smelled of damp concrete, old fish, and the faint, metallic scent of the river. She stepped out of her Uber, dismissing it instantly to avoid drawing suspicion, and approached the heavy steel door. There was no buzzer, only a small, cold lens of a camera that she stared directly into. A faint click echoed, and the door hissed open, revealing a short, brightly lit corridor. Sera's heart beat a quick, professional rhythm. She adjusted the collar of her expensive wool coat, mentally rehearsing her opening statements. Confidence is the only armor that matters. The corridor led her into a large, dimly lit room. It wasn't the rough, dirty space she'd expected. Instead, the center of the warehouse was furnished with the minimalist elegance of a luxury loft. A large, glass-topped conference table, illuminated by a single, powerful halogen lamp hanging overhead, casting harsh shadows. Two men were waiting. The first, an older man with silver temples and a face that revealed nothing, stood near the door. The second was seated at the head of the table, bathed in the sharp light. It was Damien Volkov. Sera stopped, momentarily stunned. She knew that face. Not from the underworld, but from the covers of obscure high-finance magazines. He was a phantom investor, a mysterious European billionaire who occasionally made global headlines with silent, predatory acquisitions. He exuded an aura of wealth and absolute, chilling power. "Miss Rossi," Damien greeted her, his voice devoid of warmth, like the scraping of steel. He didn't rise. Punctual. A quality I appreciate. Sera recovered instantly. She walked to the opposite end of the table and placed her leather briefcase down with a decisive thud. "Mr. Volkov," she stated, her voice clear and steady. "I received the retainer. The size is unprecedented. I am prepared to discuss the details of the Janus Group's defense. However, I require full disclosure on the true nature of the charges and confirmation of who exactly is signing my contract." Damien leaned back, the sharp planes of his face catching the light. A faint, almost predatory smile touched his lips, a gesture that didn't reach his cold gray eyes. "The charges, Miss Rossi, are an overzealous attempt by the federal government to tie legitimate European investment funds to organized crime," Damien said, the lie rolling off his tongue with practiced ease. "And I am the one signing the contract. The Janus Group is merely an extension of my capital and interests." He paused, his gaze boring into hers, testing her resolve. "Let's bypass the customary dance, counselor," he continued, his tone dropping in intensity. "This is not about the law, it's about insulation. I require a lawyer who is absolutely untouchable, someone the courts and the public trust implicitly. I am not hiring you for your legal theories. I am hiring you for your reputation." Sera bristled at the dismissive honesty. "My reputation comes with strict ethical boundaries, Mr. Volkov. I will not knowingly represent a criminal enterprise." "Excellent," Damien replied smoothly. "Then we have no issue. I am not a criminal. I am a businessman whose practices often step on the toes of lesser, more conventional men." He pushed a sleek, unmarked tablet across the table. "You will not find blood on my hands, Miss Rossi. Only complex financial structures. Read the initial brief. It contains everything you need to know about the alleged wire fraud. The numbers, the targets, the evidence they think they have." Sera hesitantly picked up the tablet. The case details were Byzantine, involving shell companies in the Caymans and digital ledgers in Zurich. It was a masterpiece of financial deception, designed to confuse the most seasoned investigator. "This is designed to be untraceable," Sera noted, looking up. "Precisely. And your job is to prove it is merely complex." Damien leaned forward, finally dropping the pretense of a polite meeting. "You are being paid a sum that will guarantee your financial freedom for life. In return, I demand absolute loyalty to the case. No questions about the origin of the funds, no contact with the feds outside of court. And above all," his voice was a low threat, "no personal inquiries into my operations or my history." The tension in the room was a palpable force. Sera knew this was the line. Cross it, and she entered his world. She looked at the contract terms, then at the man, the cold, beautiful danger he represented. She took a deep breath, recognizing that this was more than a contract. It was a vow of silence. "I don't need your money for financial freedom, Mr. Volkov," she said, pushing the contract back slightly. "I need the challenge. My fee is my worth. And my professional loyalty to my client's defense is absolute." She met his gaze, holding it fiercely. "But understand this. If at any point I find evidence that you are using me as a legal shield for activities that cross my moral boundaries, not merely complex finance, but actual organized crime, I will walk away. And I will not sign an NDA that limits my ability to report a federal offense." A flicker of something unreadable surprise, perhaps grudging respect, crossed Damien's eyes. He didn't argue. He simply extended a hand, the light catching a large, smooth onyx ring. "Your integrity is your value, counselor," he conceded, a hint of genuine interest in his voice. We have an agreement. Welcome to the Janus Group. You start tomorrow." Seraphina didn't shake his hand. She took the tablet, secured her briefcase, and turned to leave, walking past the silent Victor. She had taken the bait, but she hadn't surrendered her soul. Yet, the morning after her meeting with Damien, Seraphina arrived at her high-rise office feeling profoundly unsettled. The warehouse meeting had left a residue of paranoia she couldn't shake off, but the sheer scale of the legal challenge now sitting on her desk quickly subsumed her personal anxiety. The case of the Janus Group was a legal labyrinth. The alleged wire fraud involved dozens of transactions, meticulously structured to mimic legitimate, high-frequency trading. It would take weeks just to untangle the financial timeline. She spent the morning in focused silence, drowning in digital ledgers and encrypted chat logs provided by Damien's team. She noticed their efficiency was frightening. Every document was flawless, every detail accounted for. Too perfect, perhaps. Later that afternoon, a sleek, black Rolls-Royce Ghost, a car she was almost certain was driven by Victor, pulled up to her firm's entrance. Damien Volkov didn't appear for meetings. He summoned. The instruction was simple. Lunch. The location was a discreet, private dining room at a century-sold club in the heart of the Loop, a place where Chicago's elite sealed deals with a handshake and a glass of aged whiskey. When Sera entered, Damien was already seated, the picture of an unchallenged titan of industry. He didn't offer small talk. "I called this meeting because your initial analysis is incomplete," Damien began, setting down a knife. "You are looking at the documents. You are not looking at the players." "I look at the evidence, Mr. Volkov," Sera retorted, refusing the waiter's offer of champagne. "The defense relies on the facts, not the rumors surrounding the prosecution." "In this world, Miss Rossi, the rumors are the facts," he countered, meeting her gaze across the pristine white tablecloth. "The prosecutor, Agent Elias Thorne, is driven not by justice, but by a personal vendetta against anyone associated with the old money of Chicago. I deal with evidence, not character assassination," Sera insisted. Damien let out a low, humorless chuckle. "Such noble purity. It will get you killed, counselor, or at least lose you the case. Thorne believes he is slaying a dragon. He sees me. He sees the dragon." The word dragon hung in the air, a subtle confirmation of the true nature of his power. He leaned slightly closer. "Thorne is targeting the Janus fund manager, a man named Adrian Costa. Costa is a weak link. He's a pawn. If Costa breaks, the entire structure collapses, and the FBI gets a direct line to me." He pushed a small, plain flash drive across the table. "This contains a financial trail, legitimate, verifiable transactions that place Costa away from the decision-making at the time of the alleged fraud. Use it. Create a firewall, protect Costa, and you protect the operation. Your task is to make Adrian Costa untouchable. A promise." Sera picked up the drive, feeling the weight of the immense pressure he was placing on her. "You are asking me to put my entire reputation on the line to defend a man you've just called a weak link," she observed, her eyes narrowing. "That promise cuts both ways, Mr. Volkov. If I succeed in building this firewall, you must promise that Costa's future and mine is secured." Damien watched her, a calculated glint in his eye. He was assessing her not just as a lawyer, but as a potential ally or a potential threat. "My word is gold, Miss Rossi," Damien stated, the cold promise echoing in the quiet room. "Adrian Costa will walk free, financially sound, and unharmed, and you will be the most successful defense attorney in the Midwest. Fail, however, and the consequences will be inconvenient for us both." He didn't elaborate on the inconvenience, but Sera understood. Failure meant falling into the orbit of the Huck Long whore, and in that world, inconvenience often meant annihilation. She felt the seductive and terrifying weight of the power she was now holding. She had accepted the contract, and now she was bound by the cold promise of the ghost. The following weeks dissolved into a blur of intense legal work. Seraphina was driven by a mix of ambition, professional pride, and the chilling pressure from Damien Volkov. She successfully erected a formidable legal defense, using the documents provided by Damien to paint Adrian Costa as an innocent functionary caught in the gears of a complex international banking system. During this time, her interactions with Damien became routine, yet intensely charged. He never came to her office. She was always summoned to sterile, luxurious, and ever-changing locations. A high-end art gallery after hours, a private box at the United Center, or once, the roof garden of a deserted skyscraper. Their dialogue was always a sparring match of wits and wills. One evening, Seraphina was working late in her office, surrounded by stacks of paper files, the few physical documents Damien allowed her to handle. She was trying to reconcile a suspicious gap in the digital communication logs. It was a minor anomaly, but her legal instinct screamed that it was important. The elevator chimed after midnight, an impossibility, as her floor required a unique keycard. Seraphina froze. She reached slowly for the panic button concealed beneath her desk. The office door swung open, and Damien Volkov stepped in. He wasn't in a suit. He wore black, impeccably cut trousers and a black cashmere sweater, which made him look less like a CEO and more like a predator blending into the urban night. "I told your security detail to stand down," he explained simply, his eyes sweeping over the scattered documents on her desk. "I needed to speak with you privately." "This is an invasion of privacy, Mr. Volkov," Seraphina stated, her voice tight but unwavering. "My office is my professional sanctuary." "Sanctuaries don't protect secrets, Miss Rossi," he countered, walking closer. He stopped beside her, his physical presence overwhelming the space. His proximity was a distinct, dangerous heat. He picked up the printout she was studying, the communication gap. "You're wasting your time on this. It's a glitch in the server firewall, nothing more." "A glitch that hides 3 days of communication during the crucial transfer period," Sera challenged, looking up at him. "My instinct tells me there's more." "Your instinct is misinformed," Damien said, his tone turning utterly cold. "You are hired to look forward, not backward. The past is not negotiable." Sera realized her mistake. She had crossed the line he had drawn in the warehouse. "The past is exactly where the truth is, Mr. Volkov," she whispered. "And I'm a lawyer. I deal in the truth." Damien leaned down, placing his hands on the desk on either side of her, trapping her. His face was only inches from hers, and for the first time, she saw beyond the polished billionaire to the raw, untamed danger of the ghost. "The truth is a luxury few people in this city can afford, Seraphina," he said, using her first name for the first time, a chilling intimacy, especially those who dig where they shouldn't. "I have given you everything you need to win. Trust the framework. Because I assure you, what you think you want to find in the past, you do not." His eyes, those sharp gray pools, held a depth of warning and pain she couldn't interpret. It was a flicker of the internal complexity his reputation never showed. "I know things about you too," Sera shot back, despite the rapid pulse in her veins. "The Black Dragon Syndicate, the whispered name of the ghost. You control the invisible structure of this city." Damien straightened up slowly, the danger receding but the chill remaining. "And you, Seraphina, are trying to build your name on the back of that structure. We are both ambitious. Don't mistake my protection for weakness. Stick to the law, win the case, and forget about the shadows behind my desk." He turned and walked towards the door. Before leaving, he paused, his back to her. "My family lost someone in this city's shadows," he said, his voice barely audible, a raw, unexpected confession. "I rule the darkness now so that no one else has to feel that loss. But I warn you, the shadows bite back." He left, the heavy door clicking shut behind him, leaving Seraphina alone, her heart pounding. She hadn't just met her client. She had met her adversary, and perhaps the architect of her own fate. She realized the professional arrangement was quickly becoming intensely personal, pulling her into a darkness she couldn't legally defend against. The tension in the office lingered like an electric charge. Seraphina couldn't shake the memory of Damien's proximity, nor the chilling, brief confession about the loss of his family. It humanized him in a way she hadn't anticipated, making the lines between client and criminal more blurry than ever. The legal battle over Adrian Costa intensified. The FBI, led by Agent Thorne, ramped up the pressure, leaking sensationalized details to the media, trying to tie Costa directly to international money laundering. Damien, in turn, began to orchestrate a public relations campaign that was as subtle as it was brilliant. "We need to neutralize the media narrative," Damien instructed Sera one afternoon, speaking from a secure line that scrambled his location. "You are going to take the lead. You are the perfect counter-narrative." "I am a lawyer, Mr. Volkov, not a publicist," Sera countered dryly. "You are the shield, Seraphina. You are integrity personified," Damien insisted. "The public needs to see you fighting for the innocent Costa, making his defense look clean, ethical, and undeniable. You need to become the perfect facade." The next week, Seraphina found herself thrust into the blinding spotlight. She gave a cool, measured press conference on the courthouse steps, articulating the complexity of international finance and dismissing the FBI's claims as baseless speculation driven by anti-immigrant prejudice against a hard-working entrepreneur. She was brilliant. She was poised. The media loved her, focusing on her talent and professionalism, shifting the conversation from Costa's alleged crimes to the prosecutor's aggressive tactics. The firewall was holding. Damien watched her on the live feed in his office. He saw her composure, her strength, and the genuine fire in her eyes when she spoke of justice. He felt a sudden, sharp pang of conflicting emotions, professional admiration, and a deepening, unwanted personal fascination. She was everything he was not: light, truthful, and fiercely moral. Later that week, Damien contacted her with a new, unusual request. "I need you to attend a gala," Damien said. "A charity event for the Chicago Children's Foundation. It is a necessary public appearance to cement the image of legitimate high society patronage for the Janus Group. You will accompany me." Sera was taken aback. "Mr. Volkov, my role is legal counsel, not a social escort." "Your role is to build the facade," Damien corrected her, his voice firm. "And for this image to be flawless, you cannot be seen as merely a hired gun. You must be seen as an associate, an essential part of the inner circle. The event is tonight. Victor will provide the details." She hated it, but she understood the strategic necessity. The court of public opinion was as important as the courtroom itself. That evening, when the Rolls-Royce pulled up to her apartment, the change was dramatic. Seraphina was wearing a gown she had hastily purchased, a sleek, sapphire blue dress that contrasted sharply with her usual severe suits. Damien was waiting. He looked devastating in a tuxedo, the black cloth only enhancing the dangerous intensity of his eyes and his imposing physique. "Elegant counselor," he remarked, his gaze lingering on her for a moment longer than necessary. "But remember why we are here. Do not let the glitter distract you from the goal." "I am well aware of the goal," Sera replied coolly, stepping into the car. "To create an image of legitimacy. Don't worry, Mr. Volkov. I will play the role of your respected associate perfectly." As they entered the grand ballroom, the murmur of conversation immediately died down. All eyes turned to the striking pair. Damien Volkov, the ghost, rarely appeared in public. Seraphina, the rising star lawyer, was his unexpected companion. They moved through the crowd, Damien introducing her with practiced, effortless charm, speaking of her invaluable guidance on his philanthropic ventures. Seraphina played her part flawlessly, fielding questions about the Janus Group with practiced ease, her every word a testament to their supposed transparency. But then, as they stood near a large ice sculpture, a distinguished-looking older man approached them, a prominent judge in the federal circuit. "Mr. Volkov," the judge greeted him warmly, "and this must be the remarkable Miss Rossi. Your name is on everyone's lips, young lady." A tenacious defense. "Thank you, Judge," Sera replied, polite but professional. The judge leaned in, dropping his voice conspiratorially. "I just hope you know who you are working for. Some men build legitimate empires. Others build monuments to the shadows. Be careful where you cast your professional light, Miss Rossi." The warning was clear, delivered with a subtle sincerity that shook Seraphina. She glanced up at Damien, whose expression remained completely unreadable, a statue of cold control. "The Janus Group stands for innovation, Judge," Damien interjected smoothly, his hand resting lightly, possessively, on the small of Sera's back, a gesture that felt like both a territorial mark and a subtle push of support. "And Miss Rossi is dedicated to the truth of that innovation. Nothing more." The judge gave a curt nod and moved away. Sera immediately pulled away from Damien's touch, the light pressure on her back sparking an unexpected jolt. "I believe that was a warning, Mr. Volkov, from someone who knows something about you." "Everyone knows something about me, Seraphina," Damien murmured, his voice low and close. "The question is whether they have the courage to act on it, and whether you believe the rumor or the man standing next to you." The tension between them was no longer purely professional. It was raw, magnetic, and dangerous. They were standing in the heart of the city's elite, creating a perfect facade of legitimacy, yet trapped in a dangerous dance of trust and lies. Seraphina was now dangerously close to the ghost's orbit, and she wasn't sure if she wanted to escape. The pressure of the Costa case reached a fever pitch. The FBI finally secured a key witness, a disgruntled former accountant who was set to testify the following Monday. This was the crack in the facade Damien had tried so hard to build. Damien immediately summoned Seraphina. The meeting place was unusual, even for him, the roof terrace of a deserted manufacturing plant on the west side, overlooking the vast, dark expanse of Lake Michigan. It was a torrential, cold Chicago rain, and the neon lights of the city reflected weakly on the soaked concrete. Sera arrived, her hair slightly damp, wearing a trench coat over a professional suit. Damien was waiting under a small, retractable awning. He stood rigid, looking out at the storm, the atmosphere around him thick with barely contained fury. "The accountant is irrelevant," Damien stated, turning to face her. "He is an opportunistic liar." "He has bank statements," Mr. Volkov, Sera countered, walking towards the edge of the awning. "He has proof that Costa received unscheduled bonuses directly from a shell company tied to the alleged money laundering. If he testifies, Costa is finished, and so is the illusion of the Janus Group's innocence." "He will not testify," Damien said, his voice hard. Sera stepped forward, the rain beginning to mist onto her face. "Is that a legal prediction, or a threat?" Damien took a deliberate step toward her, closing the already small distance between them. The sound of the torrential rain became the only thing separating their voices. "Do not insult me with such predictable accusations," Damien said, his gray eyes flashing with dangerous intensity. "I am not an amateur. I do not resort to violence for a simple witness. I am telling you, counselor, that I will utilize every leverage, every contract, every secret I possess to discredit him and secure Costa's protection." "Leverage? Secrets? That's not the law, that's intimidation," Sera challenged, refusing to back down, her voice trembling slightly, not from fear, but from the raw, intoxicating tension of confronting him. "You are so focused on your law," Damien mocked softly, the corner of his mouth curving in a sneer, "that you miss the fundamental truth of power. I provide the infrastructure of this city. I provide the protection. The moment you accepted my contract, you stepped out of the law and into my order." He grabbed her arm suddenly, not harshly, but with a firm grip that commanded attention. "The law is a fence, Seraphina. It keeps the weak out, but it keeps the powerful contained. I am uncontained." Sera didn't pull away. She looked up at his face, rain-slicked and imposing, recognizing the truth in his declaration. The man standing before her was not a client. He was a sovereign. "Then tell me, what is your order?" she demanded, challenging him to reveal his truth. "What is the cost of my defense? The past you refuse to discuss? The truth about your family's loss?" The question struck a nerve. The intense anger in his eyes momentarily faltered, replaced by a swift, deep wave of pain, a glimpse of the ghost's true weakness. Damien released her arm, turning away abruptly and running a hand roughly through his dark hair. "My family is dead," he said, his voice flat, emotionless. "Killed by a rival organization years ago, in a clumsy, savage attack that targeted me. I inherited this empire from the ashes, and I ensure that kind of chaos never returns. That is my order. That is the past I protect. And that is why I need the illusion of the Janus Group, a distraction, a means to control my rival's attention while I secure what is truly important." The rain hammered down, washing away the polished facade. This was the moment of truth. Sera walked up behind him, sensing the immense loneliness that emanated from him. She reached out and placed a gentle, tentative hand on his wet shoulder. "You are seeking protection, not power," she realized softly. Damien flinched at her touch, a reaction more vulnerable than any threat. He slowly turned, his eyes searching hers, recognizing the understanding, the empathy in her gaze. It was a warmth he hadn't felt in years. He closed the distance between them again, this time without menace, but with a raw, undeniable desire. The rain was cold, but the air between them was suddenly hot. "Seraphina," he murmured, his voice rough. He looked at her lips, then back into her eyes. "You are fire. You will burn this city down with your truth. Only if you let me," she whispered, her resolve dissolving under the force of his gaze and the dark intensity of the moment. He didn't hesitate. He covered her mouth with his own. The kiss was not tender. It was a desperate, fierce collision, a release of weeks of pent-up tension and shared secrets. It was possessive and demanding, tasting of the cold rain and the dangerous, hidden power they both knew he wielded. He pulled back, breathing heavily, their faces inches apart. "The witness is dealt with," Damien stated, his voice now a low growl, reclaiming his control, but the tremor of emotion still audible. "He will invoke the Fifth Amendment on Monday. But you," he looked deep into her eyes, "you are the variable I cannot control." He turned and strode quickly towards the roof access door, disappearing into the building's shadows. Seraphina stood alone in the pounding rain, her body thrumming with the shock of the kiss and the devastating revelation of his secret pain. She was no longer just his lawyer. She was a secret, a risk, and now, a dangerous magnetic pull in his meticulously ordered world. The line between law and love, ethics and desire, had been completely erased by a single, desperate kiss under the Chicago rain. The kiss under the rain had changed everything. It was a breach in the carefully constructed fortress of their professional relationship, a spark that ignited the dangerous connection between the moral lawyer and the cold mob boss. On Monday, the courtroom was a theater of tension. The disgruntled accountant, the FBI's star witness, took the stand. But just as he was sworn in, he invoked his Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination, refusing to answer any questions. The courtroom erupted in shock. Agent Thorne's face went white with fury. Seraphina, maintaining a professional poker face, moved swiftly, successfully petitioning the judge to dismiss the case for lack of evidence. The perfect facade had won. Later that day, Seraphina returned to her apartment, mentally exhausted. She wasn't celebrating. She was deeply troubled by the means of her victory. She knew Damien had applied pressure, likely involving the witness's deep-seated secrets, not brute force. The efficiency of his shadow power was unnerving. As she stepped out of the elevator, she found Damien standing by her door. He was waiting openly, a bold disregard for caution. "Congratulations, counselor," he said, his tone flat, yet his eyes held a strange, possessive warmth. "You are now officially the most sought-after defense attorney in Chicago. The facade is complete." The witness invoked the fifth. "Mr. Volkov," Sera replied, her voice taut. "You didn't use the law. You used leverage. Tell me what it cost that man." Damien leaned against the doorframe, a picture of dangerous ease. His reputation, his pension, his chance to testify against me. Nothing more. No blood, no body. Only the destruction of his social standing. A transaction, Seraphina. Nothing more. A transaction that crossed my boundary. She insisted. "No," he corrected her softly, stepping closer. "It crossed the law's boundary, not yours. Your boundary is blurring, Seraphina. You defended Costa, knowing the client was guilty, and you did it brilliantly. You are not as pure as you pretend." He reached out and gently brushed a damp strand of hair from her cheek. "I am not asking you to join the dark. I am asking you to acknowledge the gray area we both now inhabit." The sheer intimacy of his touch, combined with his raw psychological insight, disarmed her. "What exactly do you want from me now, Damien?" she asked, dropping the formality for the first time outside of the rain. "I want the truth," he whispered, his eyes searching hers. "Not the legal truth, the genuine truth. I need to know why you kissed me back, Seraphina. You are the only person who has ever looked at me and seen the man beneath the monster. I need to know what you see." Sera stepped back, opening her apartment door. "Come in," she invited, a silent acknowledgement that their conversation required absolute privacy. Once inside, she turned to face him, the elegance of her apartment a sharp contrast to the danger he brought with him. "I saw pain, Damien," she admitted, her voice low. "I saw a man who is immensely powerful but utterly alone. And you saw the fire in me that wants to take risks, that doesn't want the predictable life of a partner in a law firm. You saw my own shadow." Damien's control fractured. He walked towards her, his movements swift and determined. He didn't speak. He simply placed a hand on the back of her neck and pulled her towards him, initiating a kiss that was deeper, slower, and more consuming than the last. It wasn't a question or a threat. It was a silent, powerful affirmation of their connection. They broke apart, both breathing heavily. "This can't happen," Sera murmured, though the denial was weak. "I am the law. You are the Black Dragon. The law lost the moment you won the case for me," Damien argued, his forehead resting against hers. "You are now bound to me. Not by contract, but by something more dangerous." He pulled away abruptly, reclaiming his control. "The case is over. Costa is free. The Janus Group is safe. But my enemies have noticed you. They see you as a vulnerability, Seraphina. A point of leverage against the ghost." His eyes were cold again, filled with professional concern. "I will not let you be harmed. The cost of this relationship is that I must now dedicate resources to your protection. You have been pulled into the game, Seraphina. And in this game, the next move is rarely the one you expect." He didn't wait for a reply. He walked to the door, his silhouette immense in the hallway light. "You will be contacted," he stated. "But know this. You are safe, because your safety is now personal to me." He left, leaving Sera standing alone, the scent of his dark cologne lingering in the air. She had won the case, but she had lost her independence, trapped now in the terrifying, intoxicating, and utterly unpredictable world of Damien Volkov. The next few days were marked by a tense quiet. Seraphina tried to return to her normal life, but the world felt flat and dull without Damien's dangerous presence. Her law firm celebrated her victory, but she felt disconnected, tainted by the secret knowledge of how the case was truly won. She was under surveillance, not the chilling surveillance of the enemy, but the careful, distant protection of Damien's own men. She spotted them subtly. A dark SUV always parked 2 blocks away, a man casually reading a newspaper at the coffee shop across the street. It was a constant, unnerving reminder of the world she now belonged to. The fragile peace was shattered late one evening. Sera was having a quiet, necessary drink with her old law school roommate Lena at a secluded bar in Lincoln Park. They were discussing Sera's newfound fame when a man, large and menacing, wearing a cheap, ill-fitting suit, approached their table. "Seraphina Rossi?" the man asked, his voice low and guttural, carrying a faint Eastern European accent. "Yes," Sera replied, her professional instincts kicking in instantly, her posture defensive. "A gift from the West Side," the man muttered, and before anyone could react, he slammed a small, blood-splattered package onto the table in front of her. It was a silver tie clip, unmistakably belonging to Adrian Costa, her former client. The message was clear. Her shield had failed, and Costa had been violently dealt with. Sera's blood ran cold. She pushed the package away, her hand shaking. The man chuckled, a sound like scraping metal, and then vanished into the bustling crowd. She immediately rushed back to her apartment and used the secure, encrypted line Damien had provided her. He answered on the first ring, his voice sharp with professional alertness. "What is it, Seraphina?" "They got Costa," she choked out, her voice barely steady. "A man just left me a package. His tie clip. It was not clean." The silence on the line was instant and total, more terrifying than any shouting. "Where are you?" Damien demanded, his voice dropping to a low, raw snarl. "My apartment. He found me at the Rookery bar. Stay put. Do not move. Do not open your door for anyone." The line went dead. 20 minutes later, the door to her apartment was thrown open, and Damien Volkov strode in. He wasn't composed. He was radiating sheer, unbridled fury, the ghost's fury. He was wearing a dark shirt, open at the collar, and his eyes were blazing with a cold, terrifying rage. He ignored Seraphina completely, walking straight to the package on her table. He examined the tie clip for a second, then crushed the small silver object in his gloved hand. "The West Side Vipers," he spat out, the name an expletive. "Savages. They are trying to destabilize my authority by proving my protection means nothing." He finally turned to Seraphina, the rage in his eyes tempered by a deep, palpable concern. He walked to her, cupped her face in his hands, and searched her eyes fiercely. "Did he touch you? Did he say anything to threaten you personally?" "No," Sera whispered, shaken by his intensity. "He just left the warning. They saw my success and interpreted it as your weakness. They are trying to draw you out." Damien leaned his forehead against hers, closing his eyes for a brief, agonizing moment. "I should have known. They are rats. They attack the fringe to provoke the center." He pulled back, his face a mask of iron resolution. The man she saw now was the true ghost, the absolute ruler of the Black Dragon Syndicate, cold and lethal. "They have broken the truce," Damien declared, his voice a low, dangerous rumble. "They targeted someone under my protection, and they touched my associate, my vulnerability. This is an act of war." He walked over to a leather briefcase he had set down by the door. He opened it, revealing not documents but a sleek, silenced, semi-automatic pistol. The sudden reality of the violence he commanded was stark and chilling. "I will handle this, Seraphina," he said, turning back to her. "You are to stay here. Victor will be outside your door. You will not leave this apartment until I return. The West Side Vipers will understand the cost of touching what is mine." Sera rushed to him, grabbing his arm. "Damien, no, don't do this. I don't want you to become the monster they paint you to be. This will start a war." He looked down at her hand on his arm, then back to her desperate face. His expression softened infinitesimally, a fleeting glimpse of the man who loved her. "I am the monster who protects you, Seraphina," he said, his voice quiet but resolute. "You cannot be safe while my enemies believe they can use you against me. I will end this tonight, for my order, for my honor, for you." He gently pulled her hand away, checked the weapon, and walked out, leaving Seraphina standing alone, helpless, knowing she had just witnessed the man she loved transform into the brutal, necessary figure of the ghost. The war she had feared was now raging on the cold streets of Chicago, and she was the inadvertent reason for it. Seraphina spent the night in a state of suspended terror, listening to the silence outside her door, which was occasionally broken by the heavy tread of Victor's vigil. She imagined Damien out in the cold Chicago night, directing or perhaps executing the retaliation against the Vipers. She knew that the cost of Costa's death was about to be paid in full. By dawn, Damien returned. He entered her apartment silently, shedding his coat, which was wet, but contained no visible blood, a testament to the clean, surgical violence of his organization. His eyes, however, were shadowed, burdened by the events of the night. "It is done," he stated simply, walking to her window and looking out at the waking city. "The leadership of the Vipers has been neutralized. The message has been sent. No one touches the people under my roof." "Neutralized? What does that mean, Damien?" Sera asked, walking towards him, her voice low and demanding. He turned, his expression unyielding. "It means they will cease to be a problem for the Black Dragon, the Janus Group, or you. The threat is gone." She searched his face, desperately trying to find the lie. "Did you kill them?" Damien walked to her, his gaze intense. "I orchestrated their removal from the board of directors, Seraphina. They are now in a situation where they cannot harm anyone, least of all you. I know you need to believe that I did not cross a line you cannot tolerate. The only lie I will ever tell you is the one you need to hear to stay with me." He pulled her into his arms, holding her tightly, resting his chin on the top of her head. It was a moment of profound, shared exhaustion and quiet desperation. "I will not let my world swallow yours," he murmured against her hair. "I will manage the darkness so that you can remain in the light, but you must trust my management. You must accept that my methods are sometimes the only way to ensure your safety." Sera realized he was offering her a choice, to accept his first lie, a white lie of protection, in exchange for their future. She could choose the ethical purity that demanded she walk away, or the messy, dangerous love that demanded she accept his darkness and his control. "And Adrian Costa?" she asked, pulling back slightly. "Why did the Vipers kill him?" Damien's control returned, his face tightening. Costa was playing both sides. He was the Vipers man inside the Janus Group all along, leaking information to them to cause an FBI inquiry. His death was a consequence of his own treacherous game, a consequence they meant to pin on me. The revelation was shocking. "You knew? You knew he was working for a rival?" "I suspected," Damien admitted. "But I let you defend him. His success as your client created the perfect distraction for the FBI, while I focused on the true threat, the Vipers' attempt to destabilize the market. You were the clean shield, Seraphina. A necessary piece of misdirection." Sera felt a deep, cold betrayal. "You used me. You used my reputation, my ethics to defend a traitor, while knowing the truth." "I protected you from the full truth," Damien countered, his tone heavy with meaning. "I did not let you defend a man knowing he was guilty of the crime you were arguing against. I let you defend a traitor who was already doomed by his own choices. There is a difference." The logic was twisted, but powerful. Seraphina realized she had been an active participant in his grand chess game, albeit an unwitting one. "And now I am a marked woman," she said flatly. "Now you are an asset under absolute protection," Damien corrected her, taking her hands and lifting them to his lips, kissing her knuckles slowly. "The Vipers are gone, but the price of this war is a debt. You are no longer just my lawyer. You are mine, Seraphina, completely." He looked at her, his gray eyes piercing her soul, demanding acceptance of his control. "You have been pulled completely into my order," he whispered. "Do you accept the cost of the lie?" Sera looked at the man she loved, the cold-blooded monster who protected her, the liar who was capable of deep, frightening devotion. The ethical lines were gone, dissolved in the brutal reality of their world. She made her choice. "Yes," she finally said, her voice a surrender. "I accept. But know this, Damien. You will not tell me another lie. I will only accept the truth, however dark." He smiled, a rare, chillingly beautiful expression of victory. "Then, counselor, our new contract begins." The atmosphere in Chicago changed subtly but definitively after the decisive neutralization of the West Side Vipers. Damien's authority was unquestioned, and the Black Dragon Syndicate became quieter, more entrenched, and more dangerous than ever. Seraphina, having accepted her new reality, was navigating a life split between two worlds. By day, she maintained her prestigious position at the law firm, fielding phone calls and attending meetings, outwardly the picture of successful legal professionalism. By night, she was in Damien's world, residing in one of his secure penthouses, learning the rules of his dark order. She demanded the truth, and Damien, in his own calculating way, began to deliver. One evening, they were in the massive, mahogany-paneled library of his primary residence, a hidden mansion on the North Shore. Damien was nursing a glass of whiskey, seemingly at ease, while Seraphina studied a historical document he had given her a family tree of the Volkovs. "I need to understand the origins of the Black Dragon, Damien," she stated, looking up from the faded script. "If I am to be a part of your life, I need to know what I am defending." Damien sighed, a rare display of weary resignation. "The Black Dragon is not a criminal organization, Seraphina. It is a government. It was founded after the chaos of the Great Depression, when legitimate business failed. My grandfather, a Ukrainian immigrant with vision, stepped into the void. We provide order, stability, and wealth where the city government fails. We are the shadow economy." He walked over to a heavy, iron-bound chest set into the wall, concealed behind a rotating bookcase. He unlocked it with a series of complex tumblers, a private, secret vault. "You asked for the truth," Damien said, his voice grave. "This is the true cost of my order. Pandora's box." He pulled out a thick, ledger-style book, bound in black leather. It looked antique, almost ceremonial. He placed it on the table. "This is the Ledger of Oaths," Damien revealed. "It contains the names, the deals, and the secrets of every major player in Chicago for the last 80 years. Bankers, judges, politicians, police chiefs, everyone who owes the Black Dragon an oath, a favor, or a secret debt." Sera stared at the book, horrified. It wasn't about money laundering or drug running. It was about absolute, systemic control. This was the source of his true power, a web of blackmail and influence that spanned generations. "This is treason against the city," Sera whispered, her fingers hesitant to touch the toxic leather. "This is stability," Damien corrected her firmly. "The chaos of unchecked ambition is what killed my family. This ledger ensures that everyone stays in their lane. It is the real law of Chicago." Sera opened the ledger to a random page. Her breath hitched. She recognized a name, a prominent federal judge who had recently ruled on a major corporate case. Next to the name was a brief, coded note about a loan for a political campaign and an associated favor years ago. The evidence was damning. Then, she turned a few more pages. Her eyes caught a familiar Italian surname, listed not under oaths, but under a section marked Resolved Debts. Rossi Marco. Seraphina froze. Marco Rossi was her father. Her eyes scanned the entry. Marco Rossi. Status: liquidated. Association: Old Italian Syndicate, low-level courier. Date: the 4th of December 2008. Cause: interfered with Volkov family security operation. Resolved by former Capo Volkov, Damien's father. The world spun. Her father hadn't simply died in a work accident years ago, as her mother had told her. He had been an errand boy for a rival organization, and he had been liquidated, killed by the Black Dragon Syndicate, by the order Damien now commanded. Seraphina looked up, her face draining of color, the full weight of the truth crushing her. "Damien," she whispered, her voice a thin thread. "My father, Marco Rossi. What does liquidated mean?" Damien looked at the page, then at Seraphina's devastated face. He realized, with a sickening lurch, that she was seeing the past she was never meant to find, the past he had been desperately trying to keep hidden. "Seraphina," he began, his voice heavy with regret. "Tell me the truth, Damien," she demanded, her eyes shining with sudden, scorching tears. "Did the Black Dragon kill my father?" Damien walked to her, placing his hands on the table, bracing himself. He had promised no more lies. He had to honor the contract, no matter the cost. "My father's regime, years ago, ordered the liquidation of all low-level assets belonging to a rival syndicate that was attempting to betray us," Damien confessed, his voice rough. "Your father was one of them. It was a cleanup operation. Not my order, but my blood, and my debt." The realization was a punch to her soul. The man she loved, the man who had kissed her under the rain and promised her safety, was the heir to the organization that had murdered her father. Sera pushed the ledger away, standing up sharply, the chair scraping loudly against the floor. Her face was a mask of cold betrayal. "You are not the shadow I chose, Damien," she stated, her voice shaking with restrained fury. "You are the executioner of my past. You built your empire on my blood, and you hired me to defend it." "No," Damien lunged for her, grabbing her arms. "I hired you because you were the best, and I protected you because I didn't know the connection until after the Costa case. When I found out, I buried it. I was terrified of losing you." "You didn't want to lose me. You wanted to control the truth," Sera screamed, finally letting the rage pour out. "I cannot do this. I cannot love the man who inherited the guilt of my father's death." She broke free from his grip and stumbled towards the door, desperate to escape the suffocating walls of his secret government. "Go," Damien said, his voice shattered, standing alone next to the open Pandora's box. "But you will not be safe out there, Seraphina. You know too much." She didn't look back. She ran out of the mansion, into the night, leaving the ledger of oaths open on the table. The lie had been replaced by the brutal truth, and the foundation of their dangerous love was utterly destroyed. Seraphina fled Chicago, taking refuge in a sterile, anonymous hotel room in New York City. She couldn't work. She couldn't think. The ledger of oaths had burned the truth into her mind. The man she loved was responsible for the death of her father. She was utterly alone, yet she knew Damien's people were watching. She was too valuable and too dangerous to be allowed to disappear. Meanwhile, back in Chicago, Damien was engulfed by a crisis. The liquidation of the West Side Vipers had created a power vacuum, and a sophisticated, brutal rival organization, the Cerberus Cartel, run by a mysterious figure known only as the Hunter, was exploiting it. The Hunter's methods were cleaner, crueler, and aimed directly at Damien's financial operations. Damien knew the Hunter's ultimate goal was Seraphina. She was the one who knew the location of the Ledger of Oaths and the full extent of the Black Dragon's influence. Damien was in his secure command room when Victor burst in, his face grim. "Capo, we have a problem," Victor said, his voice urgent. "Seraphina's protection detail in New York has been compromised. A small, elite team hit the apartment complex, professional, surgical. They weren't meant to kill her. They meant to take her." Damien's control snapped. He slammed his fist down on the steel table, rattling the screens. "Find her. Now. If a single hair on her head is harmed, I will burn that city to the ground." Victor cut him off. "She's already moved, Capo. She's smarter than we gave her credit for." She went silent, dropping her burner phones. "But we tracked a clean IP log, a one-time encrypted message. It was sent to her old associate, Lena." Damien leaned over the console. "Where is the message pointing?" Victor input the coordinates. The screen displayed an aerial map of a dilapidated industrial pier on the old Brooklyn waterfront, a place built for shadow deals. "She sent a distress signal, a coded message only Lena would understand," Victor explained. "But the cartel must have intercepted the initial move. We think the Hunter is meeting her there. He's not waiting. He's moving in for the kill." "He won't kill her," Damien corrected, grabbing a leather jacket and his sidearm. "He'll use her to get the ledger, and I will not allow that." "But Capo, this is a trap." "A trap is only dangerous if you do not know the path," Damien declared, his eyes blazing with a mixture of terrifying resolve and desperate love. "Prepare the fastest jet. I will not lose her twice." Seraphina stood alone on the pier, the frigid New York night wind whipping her coat around her. She had chosen this location, sending the deliberately compromised signal. Knowing her presence here would draw the Hunter out. She needed to know who was trying to kill Damien, and why. She had fled his empire, but she couldn't let his bloodline's debt be paid with his life. She heard footsteps crunching on the gravel behind her. "Brave move, Miss Rossi," a voice drawled, cool, educated, and utterly menacing. Seraphina turned. The Hunter was a man in his mid-40s, impeccably dressed, with calm, dead eyes and the air of a highly specialized assassin. He was flanked by two silent, heavy-armed bodyguards. "You shouldn't have come," Sera stated, her voice firm despite the terror. "You're walking into a war zone." "A war zone of my choosing," the Hunter smirked. "You fled the ghost, but you returned to protect his secrets." Touching. "Where is the Ledger of Oaths, Miss Rossi? I will exchange your life for that book." "You want to dismantle the Black Dragon," Sera realized. "You want the chaos." "I want the true power," the Hunter corrected. "The kind that doesn't need a stupid book of names. Just give me the ledger, and I will let you go back to your quiet life." Sera was about to reply when the night suddenly exploded. A powerful spotlight snapped on from the far end of the pier, blinding the Hunter's men. Simultaneously, the sound of an approaching helicopter rotor sliced the air, and a volley of accurate, non-lethal suppressive fire rubber rounds, meant only to disarm, erupted from the darkness. "Damien, drop your weapons!" Damien's voice boomed over a loudspeaker, magnified by the helicopter. The voice was pure authority, the terrifying sound of the ghost unleashed. The Hunter's men scattered, but the Hunter himself grabbed Seraphina, pulling her against his chest, a small, silver-plated pistol pressed against her temple. "Call them off, Volkov!" the Hunter screamed into the darkness. "Or the lawyer dies!" The spotlight flickered off. Silence returned, thick and dangerous. Then, a single figure emerged from the shadow of a container, Damien, alone, walking with lethal purpose. He held a pistol at his side, but his eyes were fixed solely on Seraphina. "Let her go, Hunter," Damien commanded, his voice deadly calm. "She is a lawyer. She is irrelevant to this business. Your fight is with me. She is the key to your past and the death of your future." The hunter sneered, tightening his grip on Sera. "She is my vulnerability," Damien admitted, his voice raw with sudden, open emotion, a fatal concession. "But you will not take her." Damien raised his pistol and fired a shot, not at the hunter, but at the heavy steel cable hanging directly above them. The bullet ricocheted, severing the cable. A stack of empty wooden pallets, suspended by the cable, crashed down. The hunter instinctively ducked and shoved Seraphina away from the impact zone. The moment he released her, Damien was on him. He dropped his gun and moved with a terrifying blend of street brawling and martial arts, fueled by pure, desperate rage. It was a brutal, silent fight, fists connecting, bodies slamming against the cold metal containers. Seraphina stumbled back, watching the desperate, violent struggle. Damien finally pinned the hunter against a stack of crates, his hand wrapped around the assassin's throat, his fury unchecked. "This city is mine. You will not bring chaos here." Before Damien could finish him, the hunter's last bodyguard emerged from the shadows, raising a gun. "Damien! Watch out!" Seraphina screamed, reaching down and grabbing the pistol Damien had dropped. Without hesitation, Seraphina fired. She didn't aim for the kill. She aimed for the man's shooting arm, just as she'd been trained to do years ago in a forgotten self-defense course. The shot was precise. The bodyguard screamed, dropping the weapon. Damien looked up, shocked, then back at the hunter. He tightened his grip one last time, then abruptly released him, letting the hunter slump down against the crates, defeated. Damien turned and walked toward Seraphina, ignoring the bleeding guard and the defeated cartel boss. He reached her, pulled the gun from her trembling hand, and threw it into the dark water. Then, he grabbed her by the shoulders, pulling her into a fierce, desperate embrace, burying his face in her hair. "You shot him," he murmured, his voice thick with a mix of shock, fear, and admiration. "You are the darkness I always knew you could be." Sera clung to him, smelling the gun smoke and the cold air, feeling the desperate beat of his heart against her. "I love you, Damien," she whispered, the words finally a confession, a surrender to the messiness of their truth. "I can't let them kill you." He pulled back, his eyes searching hers, a depth of emotion she had never seen before, relief, love, and a newfound respect for her capacity for darkness. He kissed her then, right there on the cold, brutal pier, a kiss in the gunsmoke and the wreckage of his enemy. It was a kiss of shared guilt, shared risk, and undeniable love. "We go home," Damien declared, his face resolute. "We end this game, together." They returned to Chicago in Damien's private jet, the adrenaline slowly giving way to exhaustion and the profound weight of their shared near-death experience. The hunter was subdued, his organization temporarily crippled, but the threat remained. In Damien's secure penthouse, Seraphina finally allowed herself to deal with the overwhelming emotions. She sat on the edge of the bed, silent, watching Damien as he cleaned the small cut on his knuckles from the fight. "The hunter is in my custody," Damien said, not looking at her. "He will tell us everything about his backers." "You did not kill him," Sera observed softly. Damien looked up, a rare, small smile touching his lips. "You saved me from that final choice, Seraphina. When I saw you raise that gun, I realized I did not have to carry the entire darkness alone." Sera stood and walked over to him, her hand tracing the prominent, ragged scar that ran from just below his left ear down his jawline, often concealed by his shadow or the angle of his head. It was a deep, white line that had always been a mystery. "Tell me about this," she said, her voice gentle but firm. "The truth. I need to know why you are the ghost, why you are so set on order, and what truly happened to your family." Damien closed his eyes under her touch, the act a profound surrender. "My younger sister, Anya," he began, his voice dropping to a painful whisper. "She was everything to me. Light, innocence, the reason I survived my father's brutal mentorship. I was 19, already involved in the family business, and she was 15, preparing to go to ballet school." He opened his eyes, the pain in them vast and bottomless. "The old Italian syndicate, the one your father was a courier for, was trying to provoke my father. They didn't have the courage to face him directly, so they set a trap for me. They knew I was driving that night." He touched his scar. "This was from the glass and shrapnel. A rival family placed a car bomb under my vehicle. They missed the timing." He paused, collecting the memory that clearly haunted him every day. "Anya wasn't supposed to be with me. She snuck into the car to surprise me. She wanted to show me a drawing. He took a slow, shuddering breath. The bomb exploded. I was thrown clear, but she didn't make it. They had aimed for me, but they hit the only innocent thing I had ever loved. They aimed for Damien Volkov, but they created the ghost. Sera's hand flew to her mouth, the horror and the pity overwhelming her. My father's organization, the one that liquidated your father, was cleaning up the remnants of that same Italian syndicate shortly after, Damien continued, his eyes cold again. Your father, Marco Rossi, was caught in that sweep. It wasn't arbitrary. He worked for the people who indirectly caused my sister's death. My father's order to eliminate them was vengeance, disguised as a necessary cleanup. The revelation twisted the knife of their past, but also softened the blow. Damien's family hadn't just killed her father. Her father had worked for the men who killed Damien's sister. It was a cycle of brutality, and they were both the victims and the heirs of that cycle. The Ledger of Oaths, the control, was my creation after that, Damien concluded. I swore I would build an order so absolute, so controlled, that no innocent would ever be caught in the crossfire again. I became the ghost to eliminate chaos. I became the monster so I could protect the light. Sera looked at his scar, then into his eyes. She finally understood the core of his darkness. It was born of profound, justifiable grief and a desperate need to protect. She pulled him close, holding him tightly, burying her face against his chest. I am so sorry, Damien, she murmured. I understand now. We are both products of that chaos. The guilt belongs to the cycle, not to you alone. She looked up at him, resolute. The Hunter, the Cerberus cartel, they are the chaos that killed Anya. If you are going to end the cycle, we have to use the Ledger to destroy his structure, legitimately, not with more violence. Damien looked down at the strong, principled woman who had just saved his life and understood his greatest pain. He had tried to protect her from the darkness, but in doing so, he had almost lost her. Now, she was offering to face the darkness with him, demanding a path to the light. How, Seraphina? He asked, a faint hope in his voice. You told me the Ledger holds the secrets of every major power in the city, Sera declared, her lawyer's mind already racing. We use those secrets. We force them, the judges, the bankers, the police, to act. We dismantle the Hunter's power structure from the inside out, using the very system you created to control them. Damien smiled, a slow, genuine smile that finally reached his gray eyes, erasing the image of the ghost and revealing the man he could be. My fire, he murmured, his hands cupping her face. Let's burn the old order down, Seraphina, and build something new from the ashes. The crisis had forged an unbreakable bond between Seraphina and Damien. The truth of their past, a shared scar of generational violence, had not driven them apart. It had bound them together with the weight of mutual understanding and guilt. They were no longer client and lawyer, nor pure and dark. They were a unified force, determined to use Damien's power and Seraphina's legal mind to dismantle the Cerberus cartel and legitimize the Black Dragon Syndicate. Their covenant was simple: no more lies, no more unnecessary violence, and a unified plan to use the Ledger of Oaths for justice. The first step was to deal with the Hunter. Seraphina insisted that he must be handed over to the authorities, but Damien argued that the Hunter's network was too powerful. A simple arrest would lead to a leak and total chaos. They stood in the library, back at the Ledger of Oaths, arguing with the tension of two partners in a dangerous venture. We hand the Hunter over, Damien, Seraphina insisted, running her hand across the heavy, damning cover of the book. We give the FBI the evidence they need, and we use your leverage to ensure the judges he compromised are out of commission. And reveal the Ledger? Damien countered, his voice sharp. That book is the only thing keeping the city stable. If it goes public, every mayor, every police chief, every judge falls. The ensuing chaos would make the Vipers look like a street gang. The Hunter would win by creating the anarchy he craves. Then we create an impossible covenant, Seraphina stated, her eyes lighting up with a sudden, audacious plan. We don't give them the Ledger. We give them the Hunter's books, the evidence of his crimes, which must be substantial to fund the cartel. Then, we use the Ledger to leverage the compromised officials to ensure the Hunter's evidence is accepted, and their downfall is slow and controlled. Damien stared at her, a slow, admiring grin spreading across his face. You want to use my crime to force the city's corrupt power structure to fight your war, and then use your legal brilliance to ensure they cannot turn the Ledger on us. Exactly, Seraphina confirmed, a spark of dangerous excitement in her eyes. We use the fear of the Black Dragon to ensure the rule of law is enforced against its enemy. It's a temporary, necessary measure. The Ledger will be the check, not the weapon. Damien walked over and pulled her into a fierce kiss. You are magnificent, Seraphina. You are creating a moral framework for an amoral world. I will arrange the hunter's capture to look like a civilian bust, a perfect gift for the FBI, and Victor will discreetly deliver his financial records to a secure drop. And what about the ledger? Seraphina asked, looking down at the heavy book. It must remain hidden, Damien said, his tone resolute. But the secret must die with this generation. No successor. After this is over, we will destroy it. The Black Dragon will dissolve its holdings into legitimate corporations, and the power will die with the ghost. Seraphina nodded, the weight of the task settling on her shoulders. Then we begin. But I need to fully understand the hunter's structure. Who is his chief backer? Every crime is ultimately supported by money. Damien sat down at his desk, pulling up a complex, multi-layered financial chart. The hunter's financial pipeline leads to one ultimate source, an investment fund run by a Chicago institution that has been hostile to the Black Dragon for years. A powerful family that controls one of the city's largest, oldest banks. He pointed to a name on the screen. Elias Thorne. Seraphina's blood ran cold. The FBI agent, Elias Thorne, the man who prosecuted Costa? Not the agent, Seraphina, Damien said, his voice cold and hard. The family that owns the bank, the Thorne family, they are the old money. They view the Black Dragon as an illegal, foreign-backed threat to their rightful control. Agent Thorne is merely the visible face of their operation to crush us. They fund the hunter, hoping he will bring the chaos that allows them to sweep in and seize control. The realization was the final, devastating piece of the puzzle. Her whole fight against Costa had been a distraction from the real war. She wasn't fighting a crime syndicate. She was fighting a corrupt establishment that used the law as its weapon. We have to take them all down, Damien, Seraphina declared, her voice filled with a steely resolve that matched his own. The hunter, the cartel, and the entire Thorne network. We use your darkness to secure the light. I am ready. With the covenant sealed, Seraphina immediately threw herself into the second phase of their plan. The quiet, meticulous dismantling of the Thorne family's banking empire. She couldn't use Damien's direct contacts or his men. She had to be the clean, legal front, working within the framework of her law firm. She returned to her office, maintaining the perfect facade of the successful lawyer. Only now, her files were not about defense, they were about offense. Seraphina began by targeting the Thorne family bank's legal counsel, a large firm notorious for its aggressive defense of corporate misdeeds. She used her old law school connections and her newfound fame to secure discreet, unofficial meetings. Her strategy was to find the financial weak spot that funded the hunter. One afternoon, Seraphina met with a low-level associate from the Thorne family's legal team, a young lawyer she knew to be ambitious and secretly disillusioned with his corrupt firm. She chose a crowded, public restaurant, ensuring the encounter seemed casual. "Congratulations on the Costa case, Sera," the associate, Mark, said nervously. "You really shut down Thorne's team." "Agent Thorne's pursuit of Costa was deeply flawed, Mark," Sera replied, maintaining a calm, authoritative tone. "He was blinded by the belief that money flowing from Europe must be dirty. He missed the true source of the problem." She leaned in, dropping her voice. "I'm looking into a pro bono case now, Mark. A client, a whistleblower, claims that a major Chicago bank is quietly funding destabilizing ventures in the commodities market. Foreign entities not necessarily illegal, but deeply corrosive to market stability. It's a bank that has historical ties to an old Chicago family." Mark went pale. The insinuation was clear. Seraphina was talking about the Thorne family bank. "I can't talk about client matters, Sera," he stammered. "I know," she said, cutting him off gently, placing a single manila folder discreetly next to his bread plate. "But I need to know the name of the bank's chief compliance officer. My whistleblower is claiming the officer has been signing off on multi-million-dollar wire transfers to a completely opaque holding group in Central America. If that's true, the bank's charter is at risk, and your firm is looking at the biggest malpractice suit in history." Mark opened the folder slowly. Inside was a single, photocopied document, a partially redacted, completely falsified wire transfer receipt, showing a massive payment routed through an obscure holding company that Seraphina knew Damien's team had connected to the hunter. It was a perfect, dangerous bluff. "I just need the name, Mark," Sera pressed, her eyes unwavering. "Help me get the truth, and I'll keep your firm out of the lawsuit. Otherwise, I'll go straight to the FDIC with the whistleblower's full story." Mark crumbled. The fear of legal annihilation was greater than his loyalty to the Thornes. He quickly scrawled a name on a napkin and pushed it back to her. "Richard Vance. He handles all the international shell companies. Mark whispered, his eyes wide with fear. But I didn't tell you anything, Sera. Of course not, Mark. We just had a lovely lunch. Seraphina smiled, picked up the napkin, and left the restaurant. She had her target, Richard Vance, the chief compliance officer. That night, Seraphina presented the name to Damien. They were in his war room, the ledger of oaths closed, but still a potent presence in the room. Richard Vance, Seraphina stated, pointing to the name on a new target board. He's the man signing off on the cartel's funding. He's the legal point of failure for the Thorne family. Excellent work, Seraphina, Damien praised, a dangerous satisfaction in his voice. Now, we will use the ledger. Damien opened the book to a marked page. Richard Vance's father was a corrupt city official who secured his son the job at the bank using a favor from the Black Dragon years ago. Vance owes us. He doesn't know who we are, only that we hold the key to his family's ruin. We won't threaten him with ruin, Seraphina interjected. We threaten him with exposure. We tell him to quietly resign from his post and walk away, or we will hand the FBI evidence of the cartel's funding evidence that implicates him, but not the Thorne family, yet. Vance is a coward. He will choose self-preservation. Damien looked at her, his eyes blazing with admiration. You are forcing my enemy to destroy themselves while keeping my own secrets intact. A masterpiece of control. It's the necessary sacrifice, Damien, Sera replied, her tone serious. Vance is the first domino. We remove him, the cartel's money flow stops, and the FBI's attention shifts from Costa to the Thorne family bank. The legal front opens, and I can move in to dismantle their structure, while you deal with the remaining chaos. The chaos is coming, Damien warned, his face tightening. The Thorns will know they've been hit, they will lash out, and the hunter, though restrained, is resourceful. He walked over to her, pulling her close, the intensity in his gaze a powerful anchor. This is no longer a game, Seraphina. You are going into the viper's nest. Trust my protection. But trust your mind more. I trust you, Damien, she whispered, a truth she finally accepted without reservation. Now, let's close the Thorne family bank. The removal of Richard Vance was swift and silent. Vance resigned immediately, citing personal health reasons, creating a tremor of panic within the Thorne family bank. The cartel's primary financial pipeline was severed, and the hunter, though captive, was enraged. The success, however, drew the immediate attention of the Thorne family. They knew the sudden, surgical strike was not a coincidence. Their only living weapon against the Black Dragon was Agent Elias Thorne, the prosecutor obsessed with Damien. The next evening, Seraphina received an urgent, chilling message from an anonymous burner phone. Your father's real killer is ready to confess. Meet me alone at the old factory lot midnight. Sera immediately knew it was a lure. Damien had been truthful about the organization that killed her father, but the message implied a single, specific person. It was a classic trap designed to exploit her one remaining vulnerability, the need for absolute personal closure. She immediately took the message to Damien. They sat in his command room, the encrypted text message projected onto the screen. It's the hunter, Damien stated, his face grim. He's using his remaining assets to lure you out. He knows the wound is still fresh, and he knows I'll come, Seraphina admitted, her voice low. If there is any chance that the person who truly pulled the trigger on my father is alive, I need to look them in the eye. No, Seraphina, Damien said, standing up, his tone cold and definitive. That is not justice. That is an ego trap. If you go, you risk everything. I risked everything when I chose you, Damien, she countered, meeting his fierce gaze. You told me you wouldn't lie to me. I'm telling you the truth. I need this closure to move forward. If I don't go, this doubt will be the chaos that destroys us, not the hunter. Damien watched her, seeing the steel in her resolve. He knew he couldn't stop her. The ghost could not control the light. Fine, he conceded, the word heavy with a risk he hated. We will turn his trap against him. You will go, but you will not go alone. Victor will be waiting outside the perimeter. I will be controlling the surveillance from a secure location. Seraphina shook her head. No bodyguards, no surveillance. If they see your men, they'll know it's a trap and they'll disappear. I will go alone, but I will wear this. She held up a small, elegant silver locket. It looked beautiful, almost antique. It's a Tuowe, military-grade audio device, Damien explained, taking the locket and checking the mechanism. I will hear everything. If you are silent for more than 60 seconds, I will override your command, and Victor will move in with lethal force. Agreed, Seraphina said, placing the locket around her neck. This is my final act of war against the past, Damien. I am ending the cycle of vengeance. The factory lot was deserted, cloaked in a thick, eerie fog. Seraphina stood exactly where the message directed her, the locket warm against her skin. Footsteps echoed from the fog, not one set but two. The first figure emerged, a small, fray-looking elderly man who moved with a shuffling uncertainty. "Miss Rossi," the old man wheezed, his voice weak. "I am here to tell you the truth about Marco Rossi." Before he could continue, the second figure emerged, moving with ruthless speed, Agent Elias Thorne. Thorne was not in his FBI jacket. He was in a dark, tactical suit, his face a mask of cold, vengeful determination. He held a small black market syringe. "Perfect," Thorne sneered, looking past Seraphina, speaking to a hidden earpiece. "The asset is secured. We will now have the location of the ledger." Sera realized the magnitude of the trap. Thorne wasn't just working for the Thorne family. He was the cartel's enforcer, operating under the perfect legal cover of the FBI. The elderly man, the supposed confessor, suddenly grabbed Seraphina from behind, revealing surprising strength. "He is the one, Miss Rossi," the old man whispered into her ear. "He is the one who set the bomb for your father, Agent Elias Thorne." Seraphina's mind reeled. It wasn't the Black Dragon. It was the vengeful Agent Thorne, operating outside the law to settle a vendetta that had nothing to do with Damien. Thorne was the chaos. Thorne walked toward Seraphina, holding up the syringe. "The ledger, Miss Rossi. Tell me where it is, or this truth serum will leave you a vegetable." "I am ending the Volkov line, starting with his precious light." Seraphina looked at Thorne's cold, triumphant eyes, and she knew she had to take the final gamble. She knew Damien was listening. She reached up and pressed the button on the locket, holding it open, ensuring the sound was clear. "You're too late, Agent Thorne," Seraphina stated, her voice ringing with clear, defiant authority. "The ledger of oaths is irrelevant." Thorne stopped, momentarily confused. "Damien Volkov," Seraphina declared, speaking clearly into the locket for her lover's benefit, "has already used the ledger to expose the entire Thorne family's funding of the Cerberus cartel. Your bank accounts are frozen, and the Department of Justice is already closing in on your father's entire network. I delivered the evidence to them this afternoon. It was a total fabrication. The evidence was still in the works, but the lie was designed to create immediate chaos." Thorne roared with frustrated rage, turning his full attention away from Seraphina and towards his earpiece. "Impossible. Check the transfers. Check the bank." The diversion worked. As Thorne was distracted, the elderly man released Sera and quickly vanished back into the fog. Seraphina spun around to face Thorne, but it was too late. Two figures, moving with lightning speed, materialized from the fog: Victor and another Black Dragon operative. They moved past Seraphina, tackling Agent Thorne to the ground, securing him with professional, non-lethal efficiency. The locket in Seraphina's hand was vibrating. Damien was on the line. "Seraphina, are you safe?" "Yes, Damien, I'm safe," she said, her voice shaking with adrenaline. "But I have Agent Elias Thorne, and he's not an agent. He's the hunter's final weapon." "Excellent. You've just given the FBI a gift, counselor," Damien replied, his voice filled with pride and relief. "Now, we close the chapter." Seraphina returned to Damien's penthouse, her triumph over Agent Thorne shadowed by the final, devastating truth. Her father's death, and the violence that followed, was an unending cycle fueled by multiple competing self-interests. She had successfully ended the threat, but she had reached the moral limit of their game. Agent Thorne was immediately turned over to a clean unit of the Department of Justice, along with the very real, hard evidence Seraphina had gathered on the Thorne family bank's illegal funding of the Cerberus cartel. The city was in an uproar. A major FBI agent was revealed to be a key figure in a criminal conspiracy funded by a major Chicago banking family. The Thorne family was collapsing, and the hunter, still in Damien's custody, was now completely isolated. Seraphina and Damien stood at the window, watching the headlines scroll across the news ticker on the building opposite. The end was in sight. "The chaos is over, Seraphina," Damien said, placing his hands on her shoulders. "The Thorne family is finished. The hunter will disappear into a federal black site. The Black Dragon has emerged from the shadows as the unlikely savior who provided the crucial intelligence to dismantle the conspiracy. The facade is now the official truth," Seraphina observed. "But what about the real truth? The ledger of oaths?" Damien turned her to face him, his eyes completely sincere. "You forced me to make a choice, Seraphina, and I choose you, and the light. The ledger will be destroyed tonight." Seraphina nodded, but a deep sense of dread remained. She had secured their future, but she couldn't let the past lie. "There is one more thing I need to do, Damien," she said, her voice firm. "The old man at the pier, the supposed confessor. He told me that Agent Thorne set the bomb for my father." Damien's face clouded over. "Seraphina, that was a lie. A last, desperate ploy to get you to confess the ledger's location." "I don't believe you," Sera said, her gaze steady. "I believe the cartel used him, but I believe the old man spoke the truth in that moment of fear. I found a note in my coat pocket after the incident. A single, small slip of paper. The old man must have slipped it there." She pulled the slip of paper from her pocket. It contained a name, written in a shaky script, Dante Marino. "The old man gave me the name of the man who placed the bomb," Sera insisted. "The real, final piece of the puzzle. I can't start a future with you knowing that the final killer is still walking free. I need to know the truth." Damien's control slipped. He grabbed her arm. "Seraphina, stop. You don't understand the depth of this. Dante Marino was a legendary enforcer for the Italian syndicate. He was the one who personally planted the bomb that killed Anya. He is a ghost from my own past, a monster I could never find." The revelation stunned Seraphina into silence. The old man at the pier was not naming her father's killer, but Anya's killer. The old man, a remnant of the Italian syndicate, had been trying to avenge his own past and destroy Damien. He was the one who had finally exposed the link between their two tragedies. "Marino is the common thread, Damien," Sera whispered, the terror replaced by a chilling clarity. "The man who killed your sister is the same man who worked for the syndicate that employed my father. He is the ultimate source of both our pain. If we take down Marino, we end the cycle forever." Damien was torn between the desperate need to protect her and the sudden, burning need for ultimate vengeance. "If you find Marino, Seraphina, you are playing with fire you cannot control," he warned, his voice rough with emotion. "I will handle this. I am the ghost. I was created for this vengeance." "No," Seraphina countered, looking him straight in the eye, placing her hands on his chest. "I am the light. I will force him into the open, and I will force you to choose the moral path. We are a team, Damien. The chaos ends together." The tension in the room was electric. The lawyer had now truly merged with the darkness, choosing to hunt down the killer of her lover's sister, the architect of both their tragedies, using her wits, not his brutality. The final confrontation was orchestrated entirely by Seraphina. She used her legal and media connections, creating a rumor mill that reached deep into the city's old underworld. Her plan was simple: expose the money. She leaked an anonymous tip to a financial journalist, revealing that a forgotten, decades-old safety deposit box at the Thorne family bank, used by the Italian syndicate, was about to be seized by the FDIC. The box, she suggested, contained the syndicate's retirement fund and was still actively being managed by one of its last living members. Dante Marino, Anya's killer, would have no choice but to try and retrieve his life savings before the FDIC sealed the box. The location: a high-security vault deep beneath the collapsing Thorne family bank. The time: late Saturday night, when the building was deserted. Seraphina waited alone in the lobby of the bank, dressed in a simple, dark coat that belied the tension in her posture. Damien was in a secure communication van blocks away, monitoring the city's private security feeds, his voice crackling in her earpiece. "Seraphina, I am seeing movement." Damien's voice was a tight thread of control. "A man matching Marino's profile has entered the sublevels. He's alone. Don't engage. Just confirm his identity." "I know, Damien," Seraphina whispered back. "I will not let this end in violence." Seraphina descended to the vault level. The area was dimly lit, the air heavy with dust and the scent of old money. She found Marino struggling with the heavy vault door, using a complex set of archaic tools. He was a wizened, cold-eyed man, not the brute from the pier, but a professional survivor. "Mr. Marino," Seraphina said, her voice echoing in the stone hallway, startling him. Marino spun around, dropping his tools, his eyes narrowed in instant hostility. "Who are you?" "I am Seraphina Rossi. I am the lawyer for the Black Dragon Syndicate, and I am the daughter of Marco Rossi." Marino scoffed, the Volkov still hiding behind a skirt. "Your father was a fool, like all the small fish." "My father was a pawn in your game," Seraphina countered, walking slowly towards him, "and so was Anya Volkov." The name struck him hard. Marino's face lost its sneer. "That was an accident. The bomb was meant for the boy, not the girl." "It was chaos," Seraphina stated, her voice shaking with the weight of the moment. "And you have been running from that guilt for 15 years. You killed an innocent girl, And in the ensuing cleanup, the Black Dragon killed my father. You are the genesis of all this suffering." "I came for my money," Marino spat out, pulling a small, dated revolver from his coat. "The money that you people exposed." "Your money is gone, Marino," Seraphina said, standing her ground, her heart pounding. "I leaked the location to the authorities. They are coming. The only thing you can save now is your soul." Marino raised the gun, his eyes filled with a desperate, trapped rage. "Don't do it, Marino," a new voice commanded, sharp and authoritative. Damien emerged from the shadows at the end of the hallway. He had ignored Seraphina's instructions and come down to the vault himself. He was unarmed, but his presence was a physical wall of fury. "Damien," Seraphina breathed, shocked by his appearance. "You are not worth the chaos, Marino," Damien said, his eyes fixed on his sister's killer. "Drop the gun. Face the consequences." Marino looked from Seraphina to Damien, realizing he was at the crossroads of his life. The man he created, the ghost, and the woman who represented the moral justice he had destroyed. "I finished the job my bosses ordered," Marino sneered, training the gun on Damien. "I should have finished it that night." He pulled the trigger. The sound of the shot was deafening in the stone vault, but Seraphina moved with the speed of pure instinct. She lunged, tackling Damien to the side, throwing both of them behind a massive pillar of concrete. The bullet slammed into the stone, showering them with dust. Marino was running. Damien pushed Seraphina away, pulling a silenced handgun from his waistband. His face was a mask of cold, vengeful resolve. He raised the weapon, sighting on Marino's retreating back. This was the moment of ultimate vengeance. "Damien, no!" Seraphina screamed, grabbing his arm, her eyes pleading. "Don't become the monster. Let the law take him." Damien's finger tightened on the trigger, the image of his little sister's innocent face searing his mind. He looked at Marino, then at Seraphina, her face streaked with dust, her eyes shining with desperate love and faith in him. He lowered the gun. He threw the weapon with a clatter onto the floor. "Victor! He's heading north on the sublevel. Non-lethal force. Bring him in alive." Marino was tackled by Victor's men a moment later, screaming in futile rage. Damien rushed to Seraphina, pulling her into his arms, kissing her hair, his face buried against her neck. "You saved me," he choked out, his voice raw. "You saved my soul. I did not kill him, Seraphina. I chose you. I chose the light." Seraphina held him tightly, the weight of the fear and the triumph overwhelming her. "We ended the cycle, Damien, together." The capture of Dante Marino was the final, decisive victory. Seraphina and Damien, working through Victor, discreetly delivered Marino to the clean unit of the Department of Justice, along with the evidence detailing his deep, historical ties to the entire network of corruption in Chicago. The Ledger of Oaths, which had been the source of all the danger, now became the ultimate insurance policy. With the Thorne family in ruins, Agent Thorne in custody, and Marino arrested, Seraphina launched the final phase of their impossible covenant, reversing the board. She met with the mayor of Chicago, a man who owed a deeply compromising favor to the Black Dragon, a secret recorded in the ledger. She didn't threaten him. She simply presented a deal. "Mr. Mayor," Seraphina said, sitting across from the terrified politician in his closed office, "the Thorne family is gone. The corruption they funded will now be exposed. You have two choices. Choice 1. I leak the document detailing your election fraud recorded in the ledger. You resign in disgrace, and the city falls into chaos." The mayor wrung his hands. "And choice 2? Choice 2. You publicly champion the prosecution of Agent Thorne and the Thorne family bank. You use your full authority to ensure that all assets recovered from the cartel are directed to the city's infrastructure and anti-gang initiatives. You become the hero who cleaned up Chicago's government. And in return, the Ledger of Oaths and the embarrassing secrets within is permanently destroyed." The mayor, recognizing a clear path to both survival and political resurrection, agreed instantly. The dominoes fell quickly. Using the leveraged political and judicial connections, the Black Dragon Syndicate's legitimate holdings were protected from legal scrutiny, while the corrupt officials who opposed Damien's shift to legitimacy were quietly, professionally sidelined. Seraphina orchestrated a complex, months-long legal maneuver, turning the Black Dragon's vast, dark wealth into a massive, legitimate holding company focused on infrastructure and development, the Phoenix Group. Damien, no longer the ghost, but the CEO of the Phoenix Group, was now publicly recognized as the man who had secretly funded the investigation that dismantled the Thorne cartel. His darkness had been successfully laundered into legitimate light. In a quiet ceremony, Seraphina and Damien stood in the library, the ledger of oaths on a heavy mahogany stand. Damien held a small, antique lighter. "This is the end of the line, Seraphina," Damien said, looking at the book that represented his family's dark legacy and the source of all their pain. "No more shadows," Seraphina confirmed, placing her hand on his, guiding the flame. Damien ignited the ledger. The black leather and aging paper caught fire instantly, burning hot and fast, reducing the damning secrets of Chicago's elite to a pile of gray ash. The Black Dragon was officially dead. 6 months later, Chicago was a transformed city. The power vacuum had been filled, not by chaos, but by the orderly, well-funded initiatives of the Phoenix Group. Seraphina, though having left her old law firm, was now the chief legal counsel for the Phoenix Group, using her brilliance to manage the transition of billions of dollars into legitimate, beneficial projects. She and Damien were a public power couple, the brilliant lawyer and the visionary, reformed billionaire. They had built their future on the ashes of their past, a future that demanded constant vigilance but was rooted in absolute honesty. One afternoon, Seraphina found Damien on the rooftop of the Phoenix Group's new headquarters, looking out over the Chicago skyline. It was the same building where they had had their tense first real meeting. "I received a strange letter today, Damien," Seraphina said, walking up to him. Damien turned, his eyes warmer now, no longer possessing the chilling quality of the ghost. "From whom?" "The elderly man from the pier," Seraphina replied, holding up a small, sealed envelope. "He was a former syndicate accountant, terrified of Marino. He knew I was the key. He says he's safe now, living on a modest annuity in a quiet town. He also included this." She opened the letter and pulled out a small, framed drawing. It was a crude but heartfelt pencil sketch of a young girl dancing, her skirt billowing out. "Anya. He sent you a drawing of Anya," Damien whispered, his eyes filling with sudden, unexpected emotion. "The final piece of the debt repaid." "The cycle is over, Damien," Seraphina confirmed, placing the drawing gently into his hand. "We didn't just survive the darkness, we redeemed it." Damien looked at the drawing, then at Seraphina. He reached up, his finger gently tracing the line of his scar, the Vetsero Quarong Den, which now seemed less a mark of violence and more a mark of survival. "I owe you my life, Seraphina," he said, his voice husky with emotion. "You gave me back my soul, and you gave Anya the only true peace she could have." "We owe each other the future," Seraphina corrected, smiling. "A future with no more secrets, no more shadows, and only the truth." Damien reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, black velvet box. He opened it, revealing a stunning ring, not a diamond the size of a pigeon egg, but a single, ancient, sapphire-colored stone, set into a simple platinum band. "This belonged to my mother," Damien explained. "It's the oldest thing in my family that doesn't hold a single ounce of blood or debt. It is a stone of pure, undeniable promise." He took her hand, his eyes filled with a love that was immense, complex, and absolutely real. "I ask you, Seraphina Rossi," he began, kneeling on one knee on the rooftop. The city of Chicago spread out before them, a testament to their war and their victory. "Will you be the light in my order? Will you marry the reformed ghost, and help me build the future we fought for?" Seraphina's eyes shone with tears of joy and the profound satisfaction of a battle won. She had chosen the dangerous path, and it had led her to the ultimate prize, redemption and love. "Yes, Damien," she said, her voice ringing with happiness. "I will marry you, and together we will ensure that the only rule in this city is our truth." The wedding was quiet, private, and held in a small, historic Italian chapel, a tribute to Seraphina's heritage and a symbolic break from Damien's violent past. They exchanged vows not of traditional promises, but of shared accountability and unconditional truth. Their new life was a constant balance. Damien, leading the Phoenix Group, was now a powerful, positive force in the city, using the Black Dragon's network of influence to pass vital legislation for urban renewal and ethical business practices. Seraphina, his unwavering partner, became a non-executive director, serving as his ethical compass and legal architect. Their vigilance remained high. The world they had escaped was still out there, and the price of their past demanded they remain cautious. They lived in a secured, minimalist penthouse, surrounded by unobtrusive, professional security. 1 year later, Seraphina stood on the balcony of their penthouse, the Chicago sun setting over the transformed skyline. She was no longer wearing the heavy burden of a lawyer's ethics. She was wearing a light, comfortable dress, her hand resting gently on her slightly rounded stomach. Damien came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her, kissing her temple. "The board approved the new funding for the Children's Foundation," Damien murmured, his voice now softened by contentment. Your favorite initiative. Perfect, Seraphina smiled, leaning back into his embrace. The final act of redemption. There is no end to the redemption, Seraphina. Damien corrected her softly, his hand moving to rest over hers on their unborn child. It's a daily choice, a daily payment of the past. And the Black Dragon? Seraphina asked, looking out at the city lights. The Black Dragon is only a symbol now, Damien replied. It is the phantom legend that keeps the true predators away. I am no longer the ghost. I am just Damien Volkov, a man who loves his wife, and who is desperately waiting for the chance to protect his son or daughter from a darkness that no longer exists. Seraphina turned in his arms, her eyes shining with love. We built this light, Damien, together. The past is the cost we paid, but this future is the gift. She kissed him, a kiss of complete trust, shared darkness, and triumphant love. They stood together, the powerful man and the brilliant woman, two figures who had walked through the fire of the underworld and emerged stronger. The city of Chicago, once a breeding ground for their pain, was now the foundation of their new empire. An empire built not on fear and shadows, but on love, truth, and the endless, uncompromising choice of the light.